All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Pottery with Kyle. This is your host, Kyle Darnell, talking to you, the viewer, Kyle Darnell. Today, we're going to cover how to make linoleum cut tumblers, mugs, those sort of things. I know, Kyle, you've made a video about this before, but this one's going to be better, right? We've learned a few things. You know, we've had a whole nother summer to work on this, so we got some better ideas on how to do this. I say this as I'm watching you actively roll clay through a slab roller with wrinkled fabric, but you know, that's just you. It doesn't matter in the long run. It's all gonna smooth out. So for this, we're using B-Mix Cone 6 clay. We're gonna be firing it in oxidation to Cone 6 as well. We like the Cone 6 B-Mix for this because we had it on hand. It looks fine. It's a nice white whenever it fires, but you'll see in the results that some things do different things. We have black clay, we have this clay, and then we have our own house stoneware. They do different things, and you like all the different results. So don't be afraid to really mess around with it. So here what we got, it's about 4 pounds of clay rolled out. And then I'm just kind of making a little template out of the blocks so that way I can see how big this should be. Saving those little extra bits on the side, you're going to use those to make the bottoms of the mugs, Kyle. And, you know, waste not, want not. So after trimming it down a little bit, I'm smoothing and compressing the top of it. And this just makes it work a lot better. It's been explained to me before that you want to smooth and compress and then roll it through again at a different angle because it helps prevent warping. It helps a little, I guess. There's probably some better reason out there that someone that knows more than me can tell, but I'm not it. So after you get your clay rolled out, I'm just talking briefly about making your linoleum blocks, Kyle. I don't need to talk to you too much about making linoleum blocks. You got this. It's what you primarily do. But a few things of note. One, we started making 5-inch by 12-inch long blocks. So that way it's the exact size of the steins of the mugs we want to make. And then also with your design, you drew it out on Procreate digitally, assembled it in Photoshop using the pattern repeater thing. And then you use that same thing for the silkscreen transfers you have in the other video. But a big difference with this, after you get it transferred to the block, you gotta carve that bad boy deep and smooth. Every little texture is gonna show, Kyle. So really refine it. Look at that beautiful clay. Just look at it. I think it's about a 1/4 inch thick. 1/8 inch? No, it's gotta be 1/4 inch. You can go thicker, you can go thinner. You know, I've been told several things with the same results. So for this summer, this entire summer, Kyle, you switched from using slip for your adjoining things to just using white vinegar. Why did you make that switch? Because it's better. It's so much better. Like, it's ridiculously better. It kind of makes like a glue that attaches the clay together super fast, minimal cracking. I didn't have like a single handle break on the like 170 mugs you made this summer, Kyle. And oh, it was nice. The other thing you're gonna need is cornstarch. We use cornstarch in basically every art field at this point. So you have plenty of it laying around. But that's going to help the linoleum release from the clay. Like, you're gonna get a little dust to the linoleum. I've seen some people use cooking spray, and I just don't know why you would do that. Like, I get how it works, I get it, but like, why? You're just gonna have grease all over your hands. Why would you want that? So use cornstarch. So we're rolling out using a rolling pin. I'm showing you 2 different versions of this on purpose, Kyle, because you messed up. And I want you to see that you messed up. So I started rolling that from the middle for some reason. But look at the bottom. It didn't print well at all, Kyle. Don't worry, you can fix it. But I just wanted you to see that sometimes, as great as you are, you can slip up. Now this one, a lot more even pressure going from the bottom to the top. Also, look, I'm leaving the block where it is. This is so that way I can use my fettling knife to cut around it while it's there. That'll help ensure that I keep it as rectangular as possible. Now for fixing that bottom one, line it up as best as you can and then just slap the devil out of it, to quote Bob Ross. It might double print. You know who's gonna notice though? No one. No one's gonna notice. It's just you and me, Kyle. We're the only people who'll ever know. All right, remove that extra clay so you have some scraps. It'll be a little dried out, but you can go ahead and wedge that up, add a little bit more water, and then we generally use that for handles. So, great. So gently flip it over to the other side, and then you're gonna use that roller to smooth out the lip and compress it down. That just makes it a little bit easier for whenever you clean up the edges later, that it's more rounded, because that's where people's mouth is going to be fitting on, you know? You don't wanna like put your mouth on just like a sharp rectangle. No. You need to be a little bit smooth. Here we're taking that fettling knife and we're cutting at a 45-degree angle in the same way on each side. I'll show it to you again. We're doing that so that way that these, whenever we pick them up and kind of fold them over, they fit. They'll just like fit little snug. Boop, boop. Also, Kyle, hopefully you can see how swollen your wrist still is from that skateboarding accident. You went to the doctor and he's like, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? My wrist is twice the size. And he's like, nah, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, all right, gamer, I guess I'll go somewhere else. All right, so we scored both sides with the scoring tool, and now we're just using the white vinegar on the clay body. And that's going to, it's like a deflocculant or something. I've also been explaining this. It alkalizes the clay, which turns the clay into like a gluey mush that basically attaches immediately. Look at that. That's just vinegar and it's stuck immediately. What a world. We are living in the future. The only problem with vinegar is, I was gonna say it makes you smell like pickles, but Kyle, you love pickles. So it's not a bad thing. So as you're attaching, you're kind of just pinching it up the side to make it fit, trying to pay attention to it staying symmetrical. This is a monoprinting modeling tool that we're using to smooth out those edges. And it's all just about compression, smoothing, and trying to maintain that cylinder. Now I'm taking the back of the fettling knife on the inside joint to smooth it out because my hand doesn't really fit in there. I have big old hands, and we already talked about the giant wrist I have going on. Do whatever you can to smooth that out. All right, I'm going to show you how to attach the bottom. I have another way of doing it, but I feel like it contradicts this one, and I don't want you to get confused, baby bird. So, take that little bit of clay that you had rolled out, put your cylinder on top of it, and you're going to just trace it, so that way you know where it goes. Because it's difficult to tell. And then you're taking that scraper tool and you just scrape. And that's going to give us a nice join. Flip your pot upside down. Make sure you do it on the same side. I also did find out on this block that it was not perfectly rectangular. It had dipped in a little bit, and it basically affected all the mugs. I mean, it worked, no problem, but it just was like a little bit more annoying than it needed to be. All right. White vinegar again. And then as you put it down, the important part with the vinegar is you give it a little bit of pressure. See that squeeze? That's what we want. A nice little squeeze. Give it a second, let it just vibe. And then you're going to take any of those tools and you're going to smooth the inside out. That join's really important. Could you imagine you fill this up with coffee and it just pours out the bottom? You'd look like a fool. You'd look like an absolute idiot doing that in front of class or something. Ugh. So make sure this smooths out nicely. That sponge can really help with that pressure part of kind of smoothing that joint together. I don't even know where I found that. I just found it on the ground. It may belong to somebody and they've been missing it, but I've been using it now for like 3 years and no one has gone, hey, that's my sponge. If that's your sponge, let me know. Comment below. Kyle, why did you steal my sponge? I did not mean to. I found it on the ground. I apologize. All right, now we're just we're cutting out. Time to move on. And we got 2 different ways that we're going to approach this. So one, I smooth it while it's still on the bat. And the other one, I plop it right down on the table. You can see left or right. They're both going to have to go through the same process. So what order you do is up to you. But I think I prefer the one on the left where I smooth it out while it's still on there. It just feels better. Feels like that's what I should be doing, you know? It would help if I've ever like watched a video on how to make these things. I've just been guessing. And it has just been working. And it's weird, Kyle, because you didn't really like hand building or wheel throwing. How did you get into pottery? You weren't very good at it. Did you just stick? I guess I stuck with it like when I was in college. But yeah, I wasn't like good at any of that sort of stuff. I was mainly making pinch pots. One time I made a slime from Dragon Quest VIII as a piggy bank slime, like pinch pot. Oh, it was so good. It was so awesome. But then the professors were arguing with each other and one of them decided that it was just plagiarism and didn't belong in the department, which I agree, it is plagiarism. But I was like, come on, man. It's my slime. I love that thing. All right, so I'm taking water and a sponge and I'm smoothing the lip out so it gets more of a wheel thrown feel to it. Wheel thrown feel. Ooh, that one was tricky. And you kind of just smooth it out and compress it a little bit more. All right, for handles, you are going to put on your favorite die. You could be pulling these handles, but that seems kind of pointless, right? I mean, like everything else is hand built. I'm using a roller. It's like, why pull the handles? It's gonna look weird. You like that nice C shape. It's hard to get that with pulled handles. So put the die in, put your clay in. This clay was stiff because it was re-wedged from the extra. So you gotta put that whole belly in it, Kyle. Like put the whole thing. Yep, there we go. That's just how it has to happen. When you're doing handles, you're normally doing a lot because you like to put that off as long as possible. So cut up a ton of them. It's going to make your life a lot easier. And if they stiffen up a little bit, it actually just makes them attach better. So it's not a big rush. Big time rush. So you're going to collect them together into little sections. It's going to make it easier to cut it down. Because guess what, Kyle? This year, you learned a very valuable lesson. And it's called a ruler. Look at that bad boy. For some reason, you didn't measure for the longest time. And this year, you finally found the right measurement. 6 inches. 6 inches will give you the right bend so that way hands fit into the handle perfectly. And I don't know why. I don't know why you did it like that. You didn't measure it for the longest time. So I'm quickly just measuring that 6 inches as scoring it. Because whenever you cut them out, you got to cut them out without that ruler in the way, you know? Put it down, put your hand on top. That's going to help them from sliding and distorting too much. This doesn't seem important, but Kyle, this is very important. Do not forget this next year. If you'll even be doing it, who knows? Who knows where we'll be in the summer? So grab them and bend them. And now they're going to stiffen up like that, so that way they'll fit a lot better on your handles. And look at that. It's so easy. You can mass produce these things. For attaching the handles, you need to visualize it. So normally your mug's got a little bit of wiggle to them, you know? Your hand-thrown mugs got a little bend, they got a wiggle. These are just cylinders, so where you put the handle on them is incredibly important. Because if they are too high up, it might seem a little bottom heavy or awkward whenever the person's like drinking with it. If the handle is too far down, that might be awkward because they don't get the leverage that they need for pouring. The middle also just might look awkward in general. So putting the handle on there gives you a good idea of where you want to see it before you actually do it. So we're scoring it up real quick. And getting our new best friend. Just vinegar. I can't believe it works so well. It's still just mind-blowing to me that that works so well. Add the vinegar in and it's going to break the clay down a little bit right there. And I left the screen. I don't know what I meant. I'll probably clean my hands. And attach it with firm, squishy pressure. See that little wiggle? That wiggle's important. It's like Velcro. And look, it just stands. It defies physics. It just exists in its own plane. Give it a little squish. And that's really it. You can clean up a little bit with another tool. Let it stiffen up. Really, I'm just kind of like belaboring the point here. Again, that one modeling tool you got really helps. Getting some of that extra, what's it called, vinegar out. I call it slip. Well, because like it does make a slip. Like it does make like a little, especially when it pushes out. Like it still makes a little bit of slip. So nothing technically wrong. It's just weird. It's wild. It's wild that works so well. Look at that. Just showing an example that this works with that Kentucky Mud Works Black Bear clay. You should have made way more of these, Kyle. These turned out super rad. Because the black clay works with the other glazes on top of it. But it really works when you just rub black into the texture and then wipe the excess off. Now, one thing with the vinegar, you have to have your own separate vinegar for black clay, because it will basically stain all of the clay, that color, because it still brushes on. I'm mainly showing this to you, Kyle, so you remember to do it. All right, let those stiffen up, dry. They take a while, covered, uncovered, and then get them through the bisque. We bisque to cone 05, and then give them a nice little rinse. Some people like to just wipe these off. I like to rinse all of the pots and then let them dry for like a day. So that way I don't have to like think about them very long. Here we're on the banding wheel, which someone corrected me on what it's called, but I forgot. Just putting some wax resist on the bottom to make it a little bit easier to clean up. I'm showing you two different ways here. One on a smooth bottom where it's easy. And then on a textured bottom where there's tons of divots because you printed the skull onto the clay just to see what it would look like. It looks cool, and I'm proud of you, Kyle. But I think I used up like all of Professor Madison's clay. And I'm sorry. All of his wax. Don't tell him. You gotta really brush it in to get everything. You can't really use a banding wheel for it. It'll just knock over. All right, now let's glaze these bad boys. For the most part, you need to keep this simple, and we're just using that Cone 6 Albany Black that we have on hand. It's just a nice glossy black. It does not play nicely with other glazes, though. Like, it turns like bluish when it has a clear over it, and it runs and it loses a lot of its like saturation. So what we're doing with this is we're going to be dipping the pot into the glaze, where most of it's going to be on the inside. So dip all the way down and then pull it up. And that's so the glaze doesn't really have time to affix to the outside. But it's got plenty of soaking time on the inside. Look how easy that was to wipe off. And this is the black clay I'm just showing you, so you remember to do it. Factory line make these things, because I don't have any. I only made a few, and they sold immediately, and I regret getting rid of them because they just turned out so rad. So what we're doing is we first put on a respirator mask, because you don't want any of this glaze dust up in your face. And we're using a Brillo pad or Scotch pad, what are those called? Oh, green scrubby pads, to scrape the extra glaze off of the raised surface, like the textured surface. We're going to be using a sponge later, but this helps prevent, whoops. This helps prevent the sponge from wiping away too much extra glaze. This makes it so it's like a little bit flatter. It's easier to do because the sponge will want to just pull everything away. Sponges are, they're just like that. So you just lightly, has light amount of moisture on it. And it's just to pull the extra away. Here's another example of glazing. We have a kind of Celadon green apple glaze. Coat that for about 5 to 6 seconds. On B-Mix, you want to go 5 seconds, 4 seconds, because it likes to run. You'll see. But oh, it just looks gorgeous when it's done. Now remember, when you're loading the kiln, have as much of your hair fall into the kiln as possible, so that way when it first starts up, you get a little bit of that nice sizzling hair smell throughout the studio. Of course, I'm joking. Don't do that. Put your hair back, filthy animal. All right, for setting the kiln, it's just like normal. We're firing to Cone 6 with an 8-minute hold and no preheat. And I'll show you exactly all that right here. And start. All those clicks are the elements turning on. If you don't hear one of those clicks, that means something's not working right and you need to stop it. But preheat 0, firing to cone 6, hold of 8 minutes at the top that helps push some of that extra gas out of the clay and makes it smooth. Put a brick on top, turn the fan on. And then viola, here's what you got. You got some beautiful, beautiful pots. Oh, don't look at that one yet. So this is just the white B-Mix clay with black rubbed in. Nice and smooth. Love to see it. Here we got black clay with the green glaze on top of it. These are just little tumblers. They don't have handles on them. Yeah, and here's the results. The black on black is it, my dude. Like, that is it. That looks good. Here's the difference between B-Mix on the right and stoneware on the left. The stoneware actually looks better than the B-Mix with that specific glaze on it. Black clay on the right, blue glaze on the left, but it's on stoneware. But I just think it's important to show you these variations so you have a good idea of what they look like in the future. All right. Till next time, sweetie. Love you, Kyle.